This video is about how to graph a function on your TI-83. So when you turn your calculator on, you get to your main home screen. To enter an equation to graph, you're going to click right here on the y equals button. And this will give you a list of just y values. And what you do is each one of these, you can enter an equation for each one of these. So for example, I could enter x squared. You use this button here. It says like x, t, theta, n. You use that as your variable, so x, and you square it. Here's the square button. And let's just add or subtract 2. Okay, so that's the function we want to graph. Now if we want to view the graph of it, we click over here, the graph button. And there we see that it graphed this parabola, which is the one we wanted. Now you can graph multiple equations at a time by entering multiple equations. So for y2 we could also enter 3x plus 2 minus x squared. There's a kind of complicated one. And now that one appears on our screen too. Now sometimes you might enter an equation and it doesn't fit on the screen. For example, I could do 2x plus 20. Oops. Plus 20. Graph. So now I can't see most of the graph over here. So to change the zoom, you click window here and you can set what's the minimum x value you want. So remember the x-axis, that's this one that goes from here to here. I don't need to change the x-axis, but I want to change the y-axis. So I go down to y. And since it was cut off at the top here, this part I want to see more, so I want the y-axis to be higher. So when I go down to y maximum, I'll make that say 30. And now when I view my graph, I can see more of the line. So you can just change your zoom until you see everything you need to. So that is basically how you enter functions. And then if you want to turn off, if you want to not see an equation but you don't want to delete it, then if you click on the equal sign and press enter, if it's not highlighted like that, it will not show up. So if you want to make it appear, you highlight this equal sign. If you want to make it disappear, you can just unhighlight that for any ones that you don't want to show up. There you go. So that's how you do a simple graph on your TI-83. And if you have a TI-84 or anything, that pretty much works the exact same. So now I'm going to show you how to use the linear regression function to estimate a line for some data points that don't fit perfectly on the line. So when we were at our y functions here, to go back to the main home screen, you're going to click second, and then since you hit the second button, it's going to go to quit instead of mode, so quit. So that's basically, if you ever hit second, it's going to do whatever the yellow word is instead of the regular button. So we're back at our home screen, and I've got to enter some data points. So I'm going to go to stat, and I'm going to click edit, and this brings me to a whole bunch of lists, right? So I'm going to enter my x values into list 1 and my y values into list 2. So basically I just made up these data points though. And so now we're going to go back to our home screen, remember, which is second, quit. We're back here. Now I got to tell it, hey, I have these data points, but I want to make it into a line. So you're going to go back to the stat button from before, and this time instead of being on the edit tab, you're going to move over to the calculate tab, and you're going to go down to linear regression, because this is a linear function that we're looking for. So it's linreg, enter, and now we got to tell it what are the data points that we want to be graphing or finding a line for. So first we got to put, what list did we put our data into? We put it into list 1 and list 2. So since my x values are in list 1, I'm going to enter list 1. Now if you see here, there's this little yellow list 1 here. So to get the yellow list 1, I click second, list, and then 1, and it gives me list 1, comma, I'm going to do the second one also, list 2. That's my x and my y. And then I also want to include, well, first let's just do this. We click enter. That will tell us, okay, if you want to fit a line to fit those data points, the best thing would be to do 2.5x plus negative 2/3. That's about what this decimal is. So, however, though, I want to store this in my y1 position, so I can either copy those numbers down, or to make it easier, what you can do is you go, when you're doing your calculate linear regression for list 1 and list 2, if you also add another comma and enter where you want to graph your line, so I want to put it in, say I want to put it in y4, I'm going to enter, to find my y's, I go to vars right here, which I think stands for variables, and if you move over to y variables and functions, you can go down to y4, and that's where it's going to store the function once it calculates it. So now when I click enter, it tells me these numbers again, but when I go to my y equals, see, it automatically included this line in my list of graphs. So I'm going to turn off my other graphs so that we can just see this new one that we just calculated. Go to my graph, there's my line. I'm going to change my zoom a little bit. I don't need to see so much of the y-axis. Go back to the graph. Okay, that's my graph. Now I want to see, is this does this look right? Does this match up the dots I put, just to make sure it matches the points that I entered? So if you want to see the points you entered, see here it says stat plot in yellow. So if I go up here and I'm going to turn on one of my plots, and I'm just going to I'm going to turn it on, and I just want it to be regular dots for list 1 and list 2. They're already entered, but if you entered your data in other lists, change that. But basically this is just a regular coordinate plots. When I go to graph, my dots show up on the graph, and you see it's pretty close to them, so that tells you the line was pretty good. And I recommend when you're not using a plot, you can turn it off. Sometimes if you leave it on and you forget about it, it can cause problems, so make sure it's turned off at the end. Another way you can turn it on or off is when you go to your y equals, you can turn on the plot by highlighting it, or you can turn it off by unhighlighting it. So there we go, there's our graph using the linear regression function. Oops. Okay, quit. Okay, there we go. So that's this video. Hope it's helpful. If you have more questions, post them on Piazza or email your coach. Thanks.